less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Hello and welcome to the Free Georgia podcast. My name is Jake Green, and today I'm joined by Martin Cowen. Martin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Martin Cowen.
Cowen. I always do that. I do that almost every time.
No worries.
I think of whenever I see a name that looks like yours, I think of the Coen brothers every single time. But it's Cowen.
Wonderful producers.
Well, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here today.
Well, I'm 70 years old and I've been studying freedom for 50 years. Freedom is the protection of private property by the rule of law. And this is totally consistent with the general principles of the Libertarian Party, of which I'm a member, a very proud member, in fact. Many people will know that I attended anybody who's heard me talk before will know that I attended the 1972 Libertarian Party convention for the state of Georgia. It was located in the Americana Hotel when that hotel was located on Peachtree Street, just north of where the Symphony and stuff is. It's no longer in that location. There's still an Americana Hotel in Atlanta. So I've been around quite a long time, and I'm very proud to be particularly active in the party now. Nice.
And you're running for Attorney General, is that correct?
I am, and it's a very interesting. I'd love to be running for this office. As your viewers may know, I ran for Congress in 2018 and 2020, but there's really very little traction there for me. Even if I got into the office of Congress, all you could do, which Ron Paul famously did, was to educate the public. And while educating the public is our main task, to be the Attorney General will really be, I can really do stuff as an Attorney General far beyond educating people. Although one of my main functions will be to try to educate legislators into the nuance of private property so that they don't constantly violate our rights.
That's what we like to hear. How long have you been practicing in Georgia?
I was admitted to the practice of law in 1975. So what does that up to? It's 47 years. Oh my God. A lawyer for 47 years. And a lot of that time I was a criminal defense lawyer, a divorce lawyer. I did a lot of probate work. And in fact, because of my probate work, I was appointed a associate probate judge of Clayton County. And I held that position until December of 2015, and I resigned from that position and basically retired. I mean, I had a little bit of cases here and there, and that's true even now. But as soon as I resigned from being a judge, then I was free to do politics, because you can't do politics in Georgia as a judge. And so I immediately went to the Libertarian Party of Georgia and attended a convention. And honestly, I'm not sure that I attended a convention before that since 1972. I mean, I'd been a member on and off, and I'd been an officer in a local, in the Clayton County affiliate of the Libertarian Party, which doesn't exist anymore, but I had done that. So anyway, I went to the convention, and I ran for the executive committee. And of course, nobody knew me at that time, and I didn't win. But this is a key. I went to the first meeting of the executive committee after the convention, and people don't show up. The guy that, I don't know if it was the guy who beat me in the election, didn't show up, but somebody didn't show up, and so I was immediately appointed to the executive committee of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, and I've been very heavily involved since then.
That sounds about right for the Libertarian Party.
It's true of all volunteer organizations. I've been a member of a number of volunteer organizations, and I love the saying, there's always room at the top of a volunteer organization. And as we talk, we'll get into some other things, because I'm really quite near the top now. Tell you about that shortly, I suppose.
So how was that 1972 convention compared to the most recent one this year?
Well, there was to call the Libertarian Party eclectic is an understatement. We've always had very odd people, and I don't say that I'm not odd. You know, we've always had people that are dressed funny, people that have weird ideas, and boy, I'm not even going to say the weird ideas that were present at that convention because I don't want to embarrass the party. But there were some very weird, odd people that showed up there. Of course, people like me too, who are not quite that odd, but it was very, very bizarre. And I frankly have always enjoyed that aspect of the Libertarian Party. And I'm not objecting to it. But there is a trend now, and this is largely driven by the Mises Caucus, just for us to try to get serious. And so we're going to do away with costumes, and we're going to do away with clowns, and we're going to do away with, fringe characters. And it's not because we don't like clowns, we don't like fringe characters, but you cannot run a country. You cannot be the governor of the state of Georgia or the attorney general of Georgia in a clown suit. You have to be a serious person. And I think I myself am a very serious person. And the party largely is loaded with serious people now. And I have to say, it's probably due to the credit of the Mises Caucus.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And you're not kidding about some interesting and odd characters. I went to the national convention this year, and yeah, it was very colorful.
Well, I was there too, and to be honest with you, this was not nearly as colorful as many in the past. I mean, I attended I don't know when it was, maybe 2018, when John McAfee was there running for president.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now he's dead tragically. I mean, who knows what happened to him in Spain, in the prison in Spain, but his body still hasn't been released. But was he a colorful character, and he had a lovely wife, and he probably spent $100,000 on that convention showing us a good time. And we had dancers and, clowns and people on stilts. And I mean, it was such a show because of him. It was really, really great. So he was quite a character, but he's not the kind of person that we need to have leading the party. Now, I frankly admit that I voted for him as a presidential candidate back then. And so did our whole delegation. The Georgia delegation voted, our majority went for John McAfee. But, I think the Libertarian Party has grown beyond characters like John McAfee, rest his soul. I mean, he was a very nice man, and I'm not saying anything bad against him. But to be the leader of the United States, the president of the United States, you have to be a very serious person. To be the leader of this party, that is the Libertarian Party, we have to become more serious people. And that's happening. And that's happening. I'm very proud of that fact.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely like a fine line to walk, because, the Libertarian Party is all about individuality and being your own person and taking responsibility for yourself. But there is a point where being too individualistic gets in the way of actually running for an office, or being in charge of anything where people will actually take you seriously. So I think it's good that Mises Caucus has gotten so many folks involved who are serious about getting things done and doing things in a way that will impact people outside of the LP. And yeah, I think it's been a great couple of years for the Mises Caucus.
The simple truth is, you have to wear the uniform. And, here I'm wearing a nice button-down collared shirt, which I don't wear normally during the day. But I want to make a good impression to your viewers and show that I'm a serious person. And we have to do that, and we're doing that. We are doing that nationwide, largely because I think the Mises Caucus influence. And we don't have the people, many of whom I love, who are literally clowns. I mean, I like clowns. I'm not saying anything, I'm not saying any fundamental moral thing about them. I'm just saying the face we have to put forward as the Libertarian Party has to be a serious face. and me, I'm literally I've been around the party longer than anybody in Georgia, and I'm one of the top 3, I think, in the entire country. I'm in a very, very long history with the party, and I think there's only 2 other ones who are founders of the party. And one of them showed up, I think, in Reno when we were there at the convention most recently.
All right.
And so there's one other guy, at least one other guy, who's been around and involved as long as I have. So
yeah,
I like to think of myself as the senior statesman, so to speak.
I think that's fair at this point. So Martin, what made you want to run for Attorney General over anything else that's up for grabs this year?
Well, I ran in 2018 and 2020 for Congress, and I was very interested in ballot access back then, and I'm still the plaintiff in a major federal lawsuit, which will go to the Supreme Court of the United States shortly. I mean, we're going to file a petition for certiorari probably in August, and it's Martin Cowen versus the Secretary of State. And so I'm very interested in ballot access, and that's the context in which I was running for Congress. I had to get signatures, and we had 2 wins and 2 losses on that, and the most recent thing was a loss, which is unfortunate. And the loss created the necessity for me to get 27,000 signatures. Jeez. And so I thought, I'll come back to this after we win the case in the Supreme Court. But I've always thought that running for Attorney General was perfect. I mean, there's not that many lawyers in the party. There's probably less than 5. There's got to be more than that, but I can only think of 5-ish lawyers. And you have to be a lawyer. You have to be a practicing lawyer. You have to be with the bar, active member of the bar at the time you're doing it, and for a number of years beforehand, 7. I've got 47 years, so I'm well qualified, shall we say. And so, and plus I have there's a lot of traction there for me personally, because there are issues that I care about, which are more than mere educating the public. I have connections with the bar. For example, I'm a member of the Board of Governors of the State Bar of Georgia, which is like the governing body. It's like the executive committee of the Libertarian Party of Georgia. But it's a government body which governs the law, governs all the lawyers, 50,000 plus in Georgia. And I've been a member of that group for, decades, I think. I don't know the count, but at least 20 years, I think. And so those people know me, and I have fought for freedom with those people in many contexts. Every single one of them has gotten maybe 6 letters from me on subjects over the years where I'm fighting for their freedom and mine. And then another group of which I am a member, I'm a member of that group now. And another group of which I'm a member is the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And I was a vice president of that group one time, 20 years ago or more. But I've been a member of that, I think, since its inception. And so that may be 30 decades. 3 decades, 30 years of membership. I'm not 100% sure of my time, and their records were destroyed, so we don't know exactly how long I've been there. But I've been there a long time. And there are thousands of lawyers there, all of whom will be thinking exactly like me, and who relate to me in my message. And so, and that's a statewide group, just as the Board of Governors is a statewide group. And so, Attorney General is a statewide position, and I have written letters to all of the Board of Governors, and I'm in the process of writing letters to all of the members of the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And I would expect this is a way overstatement. I would expect every one of those guys and gals to vote for me, for gosh sakes.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're definitely putting in the time and the work for it, and definitely more than qualified. Can we talk a little bit about who you're running against?
Sure. One of the things that's funny to me is that they're both graduates of the University of Georgia. Now, I'm what's called a double dog. That means that I got an undergraduate degree from Georgia, University of Georgia, and I got a law degree, and so that means I'm a double dog. I don't know if those 2 people are double dogs. I know they both graduated from the University of Georgia Law School around 2000. Frankly, I'm old enough to be both of their parents. You know? um, yeah, it's really interesting to be with in a race with these two people. One is Senator Jen Jordan. The
Yeah,
other one's William Carr.
yeah, Chris Carr,
Yeah,
and
Chris Carr.
Jordan. Yeah, Chris Carr's the incumbent, right? Yeah.
Right, and I've had I've been called upon to comment upon various things with respect to both of them, and I pride myself on trying to be nice. My comments have generally been nice comments. For example, Chris Carr was accused. Well, I know he wasn't accused, but apparently the pharmaceutical company gave him a maximum contribution.
Mm.
And they called me to comment on that, and I said, this guy went to the University of Georgia. He's an ethical person. He's a professional person. I have no doubt that this contribution by the pharmaceutical companies in the maximum amount influence any of his decisions. And I don't think that was the case. But I was proud to be able to say something positive, because there's so much negativity in the world. And then just the other day, Senator Jordan had to pay a fine for failing to file a proper form or some.
How many fines have you had to pay?
None. knock on wood, buddy. Who knows? Never know what'll happen. But anyway, my comment about that was she and I had to file a form, and I worked for days, maybe weeks on the form trying to get it right. It was hard. It was not an easy form, and I've been a lawyer for 47 years, filling out forms for my entire life. Jeez. And she screwed up somehow, and she had to pay a fine. And so my comment was, only thing I have for her is sympathy. That was a nightmare form. I'm glad she was able to resolve it with a little fine and that.
What kind of form is this? Like, why is it so difficult?
You have to disclose every detail of your life for the last 5 years, basically.
Goodness gracious! So they don't make it easy.
Oh no, and it was very complicated, and it was brand new form too. And one of the things the paper pointed out was, as a senator, she had voted for this new form, and then she herself screws it up. I have sympathy for that. I think it was inappropriate to vote for it for sure, because it's way too intrusive. But I did my best, and I think I filled it out correctly. But I totally have sympathy for someone who screws up, even though they voted for the stupid thing. But another really interesting thing about these two people, as I say, they're both Georgia Bulldogs, both graduated from the University of Law School, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of my own Georgia Bulldog degrees. But I saw in the paper the other day that they both had received in the neighborhood of $600,000 each in contributions during the most recent reporting period. I mean, that's a 3-month period. I haven't looked lately to see what the total contributions there are, but both of them got in the neighborhood of $600,000. And I'm just
goodness
and I'm
gracious.
just saying, what do these people think they're paying for? I mean, they're just lawyers, and they're going to run a law office. What are they paying for? And I do not think that these people are going to be misbehaving because of the campaign contributions. So I'm not saying that. And I think people ought to be able to, support their candidates as they see fit. So as a matter of free speech. So I'm not saying that. I'm just wondering, as a citizen, why are $600,000 each going to these people in a 3-month period? And I think I know the answer. I think I know the answer to that. It has nothing to do with their ethics. What it has to do with is the fact that our governments are owned and operated by corporations. So, we have pharmaceutical companies, we have the military industrial complex, we have the healthcare industry,
big tech,
we have the farmers. All of these big organizations, big groups of wealthy people want to make sure that they get the government they pay for, and so they're picking people who are true believers. That's the word, right? These are true believers in this system of government by corporation. Now, they don't think of it in those terms. I'm not saying they realize that they're working for the pharmaceutical companies. I'm not saying they're doing that. They have swallowed the propaganda. They believe that whatever it is they're doing is good for people. and they are true believers. And so you've got to pay for you've got to make sure the true believers get in. And so that's why, $600,000 of contributions are going to both sides of each side of this thing in the last 3 months, because they want a true believer to be in there. And that's what it's about.
That's interesting. So, man, that's interesting. Yeah. So it sounds like we're kind of, or I guess generally, not you and I, but Republicans and Democrats are kind of conditioned from when we're younger to think government's a good thing and want to get involved and kind of be a part of our parties, and whatever that party is preaching is what we're about at that time. And so, yeah, that makes complete sense that even though they may not feel like they're, in the pocket of some corporation or whatever, it makes sense that they.
Here's a good example. The Secretary of State of Georgia, I think, has like 40 licensing, boards. So if you're a lactation specialist, that is, you want to give advice on how to breastfeed, right? That's a lactation specialist. You have to have a license issued by the Secretary of State. There's requirements and all this stuff. And they've got 40 of those. I think there are probably a lot of other licensing things going on there. But, my guess would be that my opponents think that those licensing boards somehow help people, that is, help customers. That's the propaganda. We need to make sure that those hair braiders, I'm not sure we have a hair braider license. I know there's, in some states, you do have to have a license to braid hair.
I think we might need that here. I'm not sure.
But they think that's somehow good and justified. So that's the propaganda, that we need to have licenses to protect the people from people who don't know what they're doing. But the truth is that every one of those licenses has one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to reduce competition for the people who are already in place. They don't want to have to reduce their prices because hundreds of new lactation specialists comes on the scene. They want to maintain the prices at a high level. So that's true of all those licensing boards, but it's even more true in the specific area of healthcare. People are horrified, as am I, about the cost of healthcare, and it's only high precisely because the government regulates it and licenses it so harshly. In the absence of government regulation and government licensing, most procedures would be the price of a McDonald's Happy Meal. One of my favorite examples is, you think about strep throat. Knock on wood, I haven't had strep throat very much, but you can buy a strep throat test kit on the internet for less than a penny. Because you can buy 100 of them for $5. Then, if you have strep throat, you could get a shot of penicillin, which is a one-dose thing, which, penicillin is way out of patent and it's cheap. I don't know that you can literally buy a $5 shot of penicillin, but there's no reason why you couldn't in the absence of government regulation.
Right.
And then strep throat. I'm not giving medical advice here. I'm just giving a political example. In a day, strep throat is wiped out by penicillin. And so that's $5. That's a Happy Meal to fix, not a pleasant sickness.
Yeah.
But, if you do that through insurance, and I've actually looked this up, it costs up close to $200 to deal with strep throat, because you have to make an appointment down the road. You have to pay co-pays. The insurance company pays something. Then you have to pay for a medication, which is going to be priced sky high and not merely $5. And it ends up costing, on average, according to my research, within the last 5 years, about $200. But that's true across all medical services provided. We are so, ruined by government in the field of healthcare, because it's all they want to do is protect the wealthy constituencies to make sure they continue to make lots and lots of money. It's just a tragedy.
That is a tragedy. Like, $200 might not sound like a ton to a lot of people, but I remember when I was, living paycheck to paycheck, $200 was basically paying rent or not paying rent. and that's just for one, little sickness that's going to knock you out for a few days. So that's only one instance of it. There's countless others.
Yeah, there's one other zone which I would always like to mention, if you don't mind, and that is what's called the certificate of need. A certificate of need law, and I think 30 states have these things, and we have it in Georgia. If a large investor wants to create a new hospital or a new medical facility over a certain threshold amount, maybe $250,000 or something like that, he can't just invest the money. He has to file a request with the government to get a certificate of need that this new MRI machine is needed in Jonesboro, Clayton County, Georgia, which is where I live. And that's solely to stop competition. And it's in an area where, we have suffered from bad healthcare for the last 2 years from COVID, and allegedly we're worried about hospital space. And yet we have laws in place to stop people from making new hospital beds in the absence of permission. And they wouldn't give permission if they, in a general case. So, the certificate of need laws is a very, very good example, but a very, very bad case of restricting the freedom of people to, enter into businesses and provide services to the customers.
Seriously, that is crazy. How would you get the word out? Because some of these subjects are super detailed and intricate. How do you get the word out on some of these things and make it palatable for the everyday person?
Doing what we're doing right now is the only way I know how. I have been invited to two candidate forums where I'll appear with both of the candidates. I actually was invited to one, but the thing was canceled because nobody else said they'd show up. I was going to be the only candidate. But I'm guessing that the League of Women Voters, which is happening in August, and then the Atlanta Press Club, which I think is happening in October, will be attended by one or more of my opponents. And so I'll have an opportunity there to talk about this kind of stuff. But geez, it's a nightmare. People are so misled. It's so sad because people, think that the government's on their side and trying to do something for them. And that's almost never the case.
Yeah. What separates you aside from much more experience, from your competitors?
Well, as I said to begin with, I believe in freedom. I believe that private property protected by the rule of law is the key, and that applies, to every single thing that I'm interested in. There's probably no issue. Well, that's not going to be literally true, but there's very few issues that we will agree upon. That is me and my opponents. But I'm going to have I will have a problem when I'm elected, and that problem is going to be that I have, my obligation is to enforce laws, right? And so what I'm going to have to use is prosecutorial discretion to focus my attention on things which I think are more, important, and ignore things which I don't think are important. So, for example, in the case of the lactation specialist, our Attorney General just lost a case in the Fulton County Superior Court within the last 3 months, where the trial judge said it's unconstitutional. There's something wrong. I don't remember the details of it, but there was something wrong with the lactation license, and he said it as, reversed it, saying you can't license lactation specialists. Now, of course, the Attorney General will appeal that, and who knows what will happen on appeal. But my point is that there will be a lot of laws like that, which somebody will call upon me to enforce, and I'll say, I'm going to use my prosecutorial discretion to do something else. And so, the question becomes, what am I going to do? That's more interesting, or more important. Let's say more important. So, the one of the things that the current Attorney General does worry about are the kidnapping of people and taking them away. What do they call it? Human trafficking is the phrase. They actually have an office up there dealing with that. But I have two specific ideas about human trafficking that I would like to implement when I become the Attorney General. Number one is that I would set up secure kiosks in the airport at those transportation spots, like where the A is there, and then you have the transportation cross, and there's a big crossroads right there. If you have a kiosk in the middle that's enclosed, so you can't see who's been talking to, which says, we're interested in human trafficking, report instances here, and with sufficient funds, we can have that on every single concourse. We could have it in bus stations. We could have it in train stations, where we have trained people at these locations looking for human trafficking, actually looking at the people and saying, is there something wrong with that situation? Or when people come and say, I'm worried about this or that situation. And then not only that, but then have the resources to follow up. Obviously you can't determine every case initially, but you could follow the persons. You'd get in the airplane with them and make sure that when they land, they take the child to her parent or whatever, rather than taking her to, a house of prostitution or whatever bad thing might be happening. So anyway, I think it could really get on top of child trafficking in that way. Another idea that occurred to me is that, we get these Amber Alerts now and then, right, on our phones. And I don't see any reason why, at the second there's an Amber Alert, that, the Attorney General's office doesn't call up the local jurisdiction where that's happening and make sure that an investigator is within minutes at the house of the person who's put out an Amber Alert, asking that person, who took this child, where do you think they're going, and then putting planes in the air, putting helicopters in the air, going to the possible destinations with police, and doing that within hours. And there's no reason why that couldn't be done. It requires a commitment of manpower, but sure as heck, that's more important than worried about a lactation specialist in Fulton County. And so, there are a whole bunch of things that we could do, spectacular things. Those would be spectacular things that would have great outcomes. And so that's the kind of thing that would interest me, to really go after the crimes that have victims and really hit hard at those things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know a couple people who've been on some raids with the like FBI and all that for human trafficking here in Georgia. Isn't human trafficking in Atlanta isn't Atlanta one of the worst places for human trafficking in the U.S.?
I've heard that. I have actually heard that, and that makes some sense because we're such a transportation hub.
Yeah.
And plus, maybe we're not spending enough time and resources on it. I mean, that's a really good example of something where you can talk about it and you don't have to do anything, and you get brownie points just for talking about it. But my proposal would be we actually do something about it and let the hair braiders go.
Well, I would agree with that. Let's see. No, go for it.
I wanted to mention another issue. I saw a report today that Uvalde, is that how we pronounce that word, Uvalde, Texas?
Well, being from Texas, we always pronounce it Uvalde, but I'm pretty sure I've heard every single variation at this point. So
I like Uvalde better. So Uvalde, Texas, they had a report today that almost 400 law enforcement officers were on that scene before they invaded. 400. I mean, this is a really big black eye for law enforcement. Probably a black eye they deserve. But I'm recalling the incident in, was it Parkland, Florida? 5 years ago, where there was an invasion by a single kid into the school, and he killed a lot of people. But the school resource officer hid under the desk. And he didn't behave right. I don't know that he hid under the desk, but he didn't behave correctly. And I saw a story, this year about his prosecution for that. Now, it is so funny. Funny is the wrong word. It's so odd that here we have one guy who failed to, intercede, and he should have. I'm not saying he shouldn't have. But then we have almost 400 officers who do the same thing in Uvalde. Is that right? Uvalde, Texas. And, we have a lot of time as yet, and not much time has passed yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see prosecutions like those that we have in Florida right now for that one man. It's just shocking to me that, police officers have great press, generally speaking. But, boy, oh boy, these two instances are horrible. And then on the other side of the coin, where doing too little is doing too much. And one of my campaign stories is the story about Habersham County. Some years ago, there was a the police officers got a no-knock warrant, and they tossed a flashbang grenade in the front door, and it went into the baby's crib and burned his face badly. And then they went in there, and there was no arrest, there were no drugs, there was no money. It was the house that they were seeking, but this baby was, I say blown up. He was just burned badly, which it's just a horror. It's an absolute horror. And there was a settlement. I don't remember the date on it, but I did see a story that the case was ultimately or recently settled for about $3 million for that baby, having been burned so badly. But this kind of cowboy crap, just has got to stop. So, I would really be intolerant of no-knock warrants in Georgia, and I will not be, the king of the world when I become the attorney general, but I sure can put my finger on the scales and say, look, you guys, if you do this and you hurt somebody, I'm not going to be your friend. I'm going to be looking on how to prosecute you for blowing up a child. So, and in fact, one of those officers was prosecuted for something, but he was acquitted, as they, because police officers have good PR. But, man. So there's a lot of bad things that the attorney general can put his finger on the scales of to help make better.
I gotcha. For those who don't know, can you just give like a description of what the attorney general does in Georgia?
Sure. I mean, it's the attorney general's office. The Georgia Law Department is simply a law office for the state of Georgia. So, like Coca-Cola, has various law firms all around the country. The state of Georgia has a law firm which is headed by the attorney general, and the office is called the law office of the state of Georgia, the law department. And we have 400 lawyers, and I don't know how much staff, but if you have 400 lawyers, you got to have at least 400 staff and investigators. And so they represent the state when, for example, in Fulton County Superior Court, someone sues and says you're not allowed to, regulate lactation specialists, and so they represent those lawsuits. One of the weird things, though, about the Attorney General's office is that they will hire sometimes out of office. They will hire lawyers with a budget for that purpose to represent the state when they don't feel they're competent to handle it. And one of those lawsuits, and I need to find the actual name of the lawsuit because it's important. We had a lawsuit some years ago that the Attorney General's office settled, which said basically we're going to do away with insane asylums, institutions for the housing of mentally ill people. And I understand that the intention of that was good because I don't know if you remember Nurse Ratched in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
No.
This is a very famous movie. But anyway, it was a story about an institution of mental illness, and there are monsters that ran the place and tortured the inmates, tortured the people inside that were bad. And so it was a movie like that, or stories like that, which resulted in this lawsuit against the state to stop housing people in Milledgeville, for example. We used to have a big mental institution in Milledgeville. But the result of that is that in counties all across Georgia, mentally ill people are homeless, or they're housed in the county jail for months and maybe years, waiting for a certification that they're competent to stand trial, or waiting for the state people. I don't know what they're called. The people in Georgia who actually check you out and make sure you're competent or not. But it's a terrible, terrible problem in Georgia right now that we have people that are housed because they're mentally ill and living homeless because we're mentally ill. So the system is broken in that respect, in my opinion. There are a lot of people who love this system because they were so proud of the lawsuit and they thought they did something good. But from my perspective, you have people lingering in prison, waiting trial because they can't stand trial because they're crazy, and you don't have any place to put them. There's no facilities into which you can place these people.
Right.
So I'd be very interested in looking at that. But my point was that was handled by an out of office lawyer. They hired some big law firm to handle that case for them. And I don't think that worked out well for the state of Georgia or for the people of the state of Georgia.
Yeah. So that, I guess, brings up a question on my end. If the Attorney General and that whole office is supposed to represent the state of Georgia, let's go back to that example of them throwing the flashbang into the crib. And that officer is technically a employee of the state of Georgia. How would you go about that as the Attorney General? How would you go about that case? Because if he's going to be sued, wouldn't you technically be defending him?
Yeah, and I think this is one of my biggest problems as attorney. When I become Attorney General, I'm going to have to follow the law, and I will follow the law. And I'm going to have to do things which I find distasteful. And it may be that I say, oh, this is so distasteful, I have to recuse myself, and I give it to some outside lawyer on that budget I was talking about, that they can handle it for me. So this is one of those areas where I can put my thumb on the scales before it happens. So when I become the Attorney General on day one, I'm going to write a letter to all the sheriffs and the captains of the police departments and the judges and say, look, I am not a friend of no-knock warrants. In fact, they're illegal in Georgia under a certain statute, but there's a judicially carved exception for that. So I can put my finger on the thumb on the scales of that and say, look, if you do this, you don't have a friend in me. Plus, I can talk to the legislature about bolstering the existing law, which forbids no-knock warrants. It actually forbids it. But there's a case which said, oh, well, in some cases we can do it. But I think what we would do is just have the legislature modify the law and say, this exception, which was created by the Court of Appeals in, whatever year it was, is out. There are no-knock warrants. Forget it. It's not a thing.
That's interesting.
So you state the very good problem. I have to follow the law, and I will follow the law. But it brings up another issue. I don't believe in the death penalty, right?
Okay.
And the Attorney General's office does represent the state in what's called habeas corpus cases, which are post-conviction efforts to get the death penalty guy out of prison. Now, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've handled death penalty cases in my life. Fortunately, none of my clients were killed, right? But that's not to say I don't think that some people should be executed by law, but it shouldn't be executed for what they've done. I fully think that people do bad things that are so bad that they ought to be executed for them. My position of no death penalty is this: the state is not competent. The state is not competent to decide who should live and who should die. They are stupid. They are stupid. They make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, the cases that I had to handle the death penalty for, I worked really, really hard. I worked for thousands of hours trying to make those things go well for my clients, and they did. But not all lawyers are like that. And I'm not saying that those cases which have death penalty administered or had bad lawyers. I'm not saying that, because they very often have really great lawyers who are dedicated, and they just lose the case and the death penalty is imposed. But what I am saying, this will create a problem for me in the Attorney General's office. So I can just say right now, I will look at those cases, and we will defend those that I think are appropriate. And I will look at them and say, well, in my opinion, do I want this man's or woman's blood on my hands? Do I want them executed with me being the plaintiff trying to put them in the electric chair, or whatever means we have at that time? And if I say yes to myself, and I can live with it in my conscience that, yes, this person is for somebody who should be executed for what they've done, then, I'll represent them, and I'll represent the state and oppose letting this murderer go. But, it still creates a problem for me, because in principle, I am against the death penalty. And what I'm doing there is I'm just saying, well, if I think it's okay, right, as the Attorney General, if it seems to me like it's the right thing to do, then I'll do it in that case.
I got you. Yeah, you're not wrong about the state being incompetent when it comes to that stuff. I follow the Innocence Project, and man, too many people get executed that did not commit the crime that they were convicted of. It's really disheartening sometimes. And then sometimes you get that email in the morning where somebody got released and they got the person off, which is great. But
yeah,
it's brutal.
I would not want to have the execution of an innocent person on my conscience. That would be,
yeah,
just about the worst thing I can imagine as a lawyer.
I would have to agree with that. Not as a lawyer, just as a regular human.
Sure, absolutely.
I suppose your life would be a little bit easier once you're Attorney General if you had someone like Shane Hazel as governor.
Oh my God. Oh, you're so right. What a team we would make. My God.
Oh man, two libertarians up at the top. That'd be fantastic.
Oh man. I'd spend one of the things, if somebody else was the Attorney General, there's so many things that I would be opposed to. Lockdowns, I'd be opposed to masks, I'd be opposed to vaccine mandates, all of these terrible infringements of rights, which in Georgia we frankly didn't have as bad as some other states and other countries. But, I'd spent a lot of time fighting over those things. If they happened. And I'm not sure those would come, but hopefully we won't go back to that. But
gosh, let's hope not.
Those are terrible precedents for freedom.
Yeah, I mean, if Abrams wins the governorship, we might be seeing some of that stuff again.
Well, I'd be inclined to move to Florida.
Yeah, I'd probably get out and go to Montana, where we just bought property. So,
oh, good for you. That's exciting.
Yeah. Well, Martin, let's take it to the personal side rather than talking shop. What do you do when you're not laying down the law?
Well, I'm actually going to the University of Georgia now. So I'm taking, I'm in my 5th semester at the University of Georgia, and I'm actually driving to Athens. The summer break, so I'm not doing it the second, but I'm taking ancient Greek. And so that's just been great fun. I've been actually studying ancient Greek for close to a little over 4 years now, but I've had 5, it'll be my 5th semester at the University of Georgia this fall. So that's been great fun. But not only do I study Greek at the University of Georgia, so I'll be a triple dog, I have an international group that's run by a guy from Tel Aviv in Israel. And we're going through actually one of the textbooks that I've actually used, going back and rereading it and translating it. And so he and I and others do that online. I did that tonight. I mean, I told you I had something from 5 to 7. And so I did my international Greek class via Zoom, which is just great. And then I have another group, which is more local. And we have one guy in Alabama, which we've done for, I think we're well over 4 years now, but we're reading at the moment, we're reading Homer's Odyssey in Greek and translating it. And we do that every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And then we have 6, I think, people in that. And so that's a great, great pleasure to me.
Wow. Why Greek?
I actually taught Aristotle in a Sunday school type environment. Mm-hmm. And the translation I was reading said that the meaning of a certain word, kalos, which means beautiful, was mistranslated into the noble. And so what the statement is, the good is the noble. And that, that who knows what that means, right? But if you translate that word correctly, the good is the beautiful. We can all understand and mostly agree on what the beautiful is. So if you see a beautiful sunset, people don't doubt that that's beautiful. If you see a beautiful woman or a man, you don't doubt that she is beautiful. If you see a beautiful painting, I mean, there are a lot of beautiful paintings which I think are beautiful, and everybody does too because they survive. Anyway, so if virtue is the beautiful, what it means is the virtue is an aesthetic experience. So when you see something that someone does and you say, "Oh my God, that was a beautiful thing to do," you can understand what that means on a very visceral level. So my point is that ethics thereby becomes clear. Aristotle's ethics becomes clear if you translate the word correctly. And because of that mistranslation, which is carried through everywhere, I decided, except for the source that I had, I decided, well, I need to, if I'm going to do philosophy, the Greek philosophers, I'm going to have to learn the Greek because they're not getting it right. So that's how it started.
Interesting. And do you know what the differences are between ancient Greek and modern day Greek?
Not on a, I mean, I know generally, and it's sort of like Old English versus modern English. It's just very much like that. and the pronunciations are different, the spellings are different. A person that talks modern Greek cannot read ancient Greek. I mean, there are certain, obviously there's relationships. The alphabet is the same. There are many of the same words, but it's sufficiently different that a modern Greek cannot do ancient Greek.
Interesting, man. I struggle enough with English. I don't know. Adding in a second language would help me.
Well, I was, I've always, I don't know, I started with French, for example, in junior high school, and I've literally been studying French for 50 years. And I actually taught high school French at one point. And so I'm still fascinated by French. So I have a great interest in languages generally. So, I do like languages, and that's one of my hobbies. And the other hobby I have, which is a little more back in the work zone, is I'm on the Libertarian National Committee, as you know probably. And boy, that's such a great honor. I mean, I was picked by the Mises Caucus for God knows why. I mean, I wasn't doing anything, and suddenly they said, I mean, I'll tell you what happened. The reason I decided to run for it when I saw that our secretary was fired by the existing LNC. And I couldn't understand why she was fired. I mean, she is quite a vivid person, quite eclectic and quite interesting. She got more energy than anybody I know. And so I can understand why, people might find her a little bit problematic. But, I couldn't believe they fired her. And so I said, well, that's it. I'm going to run against the guy that fired her. And we obviously it was a majority vote, but one of the guys in the majority vote was the alternate from Georgia, from Region 2, which includes Georgia. And so that day I announced I was going to run for the LNC because they had fired the secretary. And, so then the Mises Caucus got behind me, and I was, their chosen candidate. And I didn't have any opposition straight up, but the guy that lost against the primary guy, Dave Benner, who's the primary guy, is a great guy, won. And then the guy was running against him decided to run against me because you can shift down if you lose. But I won, and so I'm very happy to be up there. It's a really great honor, and I'm delighted that the Mises Caucus picked me to take that position. And I've been kind of a live wire there, to be honest with you. I kind of think of the game Whack-A-Mole, and I'm the mole. So I've had a bunch of ideas which I proposed to the LNC, and they'll whack me on the head saying, "Martin, not time for that."
What are your responsibilities with the LNC?
Well, we meet 4 times a year, and we meet a lot of times on Zoom. But we're, at the end of the month in July, we're going to go up to Alexandria, Virginia, and have a all-day meeting on Saturday and all-day meeting on Sunday. But the in-person stuff, I think, I have not been to an in-person thing except for the first one after the convention, which was not spectacular, but fun. So we'll do that, and I'm looking forward to, creating relationships and trying to figure out how to get some of my whack-a-mole ideas out of the box. So I don't know. And as I say, I'm an alternate, so I don't get the vote unless Dave Benner's not there or he says I don't want to vote and passes it on to me. So I can do other things. I can argue. I can debate. It's not like I can't debate, and I can propose ideas and ask somebody to, hey, propose this. Just to give you an example, the kind of thing I'm doing. Star Child, who is one of our most very vivid characters, has always wanted to change. The LNC headquarters is not big enough for us to meet in, so we're going to headquarters, Alexandria, Virginia, to meet, but we have to rent a hotel because our headquarters isn't big enough. So I said, well, why don't we buy a bigger headquarters, right? And so that was one of my ideas. And Star Child, said, I've been for that forever. So he was on that for me. But I think that's one of those whack-a-mole ideas. Say, no, Martin, we have other more important things to do, and I kind of agree with that. We don't need to be buying buildings. We need to get freedom in our lifetime, and if we have to rent a hotel to do it, I'm all in favor of that.
That's fair. Me and my roommate at the convention this year talked about how we thought there should be a much bigger headquarters for the Libertarian National Party. He suggested buying up like a out of business mall where you could set up different shops inside. You could set up like dormitories and stuff like that for when you have conventions and stuff.
I think that's a great idea. My idea was sort of like that. I thought, have you ever, you can get a church, a sort of, you don't have to be a mega church, but a biggest church with, a lot of land where you have a lot of parking. And then obviously inside you'll have a community room. You'll have the main sanctuary, Mary's secondary sanctuary, offices. So if you got some church, an out of business church, that would be perfect, because then you have all of the meeting facilities you need. It wouldn't be quite as big as a mall, but perhaps it'd be more suitable for the purpose.
Yeah.
And churches are probably on the decline. Not that I think that's a good thing, but and so I wouldn't be surprised if there are a bunch of church properties for sale. And what are you going to do with it except something like this?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Might be cheap.
I like that. Yeah, we also talked about having the convention in the same spot each year and somewhere central where you're not flying all the way across the country to Reno, Nevada. And man, that was an expensive trip.
Oh, it sure was. I mean, yes, I thought it was terribly expensive. But on the other hand, we had two. I've been to 4 national conventions, and 2 of them were in Orlando, which of course for you and me is less than an 8-hour drive.
Yeah, that's.
And I drove. I mean, I drove down there, and I love that. But some people live in Alaska, some people live in California, and so I can see the sense of moving it about. I dread, and part of my duties at LNC is to appear 4 times a year. This trip to Washington is not too bad, but it's expensive. I mean, I don't know, $800 for airfare round trip, and
yeah, especially right now,
hotel $400. So I mean, they could do the same thing in New York, and all that would be the same, although the hotel would be more. So it's going to be expensive. It's going to be in the neighborhood of $1,000 or more for me per visit, and of course we're serving for free, just volunteering our time and money. So it's a $4,000 per year investment to be a member of the LNC. But I'm honored. I'm honored to be part of it.
And that's kind of where the third parties differentiate from the Republicans and Democrats is we have to. It's all voluntary. We all have to pay for everything that we do with the Libertarian Party, and it's why you don't get people doing this long term all the time. Like there are people like you who have been in it for a while, but man, I know of at least a few people already who have burned out within like 5 years.
Oh yeah. That's a serious. I mean, I agree. That's probably the number one problem. We have to figure out a way to allow people to be burned out for a while, but then reignite them. Yes. When I ran my first congressional race, I had a companion who was running for the state house, who was just a marvelous, marvelous guy. And he and I would literally go door to door getting signatures together. And there was it's brutal doing that. I don't know if you ever done signature collection, but it's brutal.
It's terrible.
Anyway, so he got burned out, and he's gone. I mean, but he was a perfect candidate, perfect in every way, and yet he's burned out. But he had a wife and 2 kids. I have a wife and 2 kids, but I'm retired.
Yeah. There's something there. Like we just need to learn how to raise more money and just connect with more people over time and not be shut out so heavily by the big parties. Your campaign. What can we expect from your campaign? Like, are you going to visit any places around Georgia?
I will probably not be going to. I have been invited to go. For example, I was invited to go to Savannah for the AFL-CIO meeting. I said, there are no votes for me at the AFL-CIO. So no, I'm probably not going to do a lot of traveling. If there's an opportunity to participate in a candidate forum in another jurisdiction, I will do that. So I went to Cherokee County because they had a candidate forum and they invited me. I think Ted Metz was there. Ted and I think, were the only Libertarian candidates there, and my opponents did not show up. And but that was fun. I mean, it was great to actually to address the crowd and to be asked questions. And I had about 5 questions, which was fun to answer. I did something in Union City where I was invited. I've got these 2 events for the Atlanta Press Club and then the League of Women Voters in Marietta coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to go to any parades. I'm not going to go to, if there's a Libertarian parade, I might go to it. I missed the July 4th parade because I was doing something else, but so I'm not going to be traveling a whole lot to get attention. I am spending a lot of time every single day. I'm writing letters to my colleagues on the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So every single day I am sending out a personal letter, literally typed it and it's handwritten, which I'm sending to every one of those people, and that's thousands.
Wow.
And I will and I've already sent, I think, 800 letters to the Board of Governors people, but I plan to do that a second time. Now it's hard to do it the first time because I have to type into I have to type the names in manually the first time. The second time I don't have to type the names in because I already typed in. And then I have a lot of donors and supporters from my congressional races, and so I'll be sending them letters. So my main communication method is by letter, and I will send at least 2 letters to 4,000-ish people before the general election. But the letters is about all I'm going to do. I've seen one Jen Jordan sign, which is funny. I have seen no Chris Carr signs.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with their $600,000. That could be mailing.
That's a good question, because I didn't even know who you were running against until yesterday when I was looking it up. If they're not spending it on marketing and advertising, what are they? Where does that money go? I don't get it.
I guess we could look at their report and see what they spent money on, but
well, that's just what they say they spend money on.
So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting problem. I mean, it's really baffling. I mean, to have your opponents getting $600,000 and you get, pennies. It's really amazing.
Yep. Well, Martin, we're going to wrap it up here, but one last question. Why should people vote for you?
We are on the brink of fascism nationally. And, we are ruled by corporations, which is my definition. One of the features of fascism, that the corporations and the state are bound together at the hip and they act in concert. And that's definitely happening on the national level. I don't think we have that problem in Georgia yet, but we have very serious influence by corporations that want to make our lives more expensive and more difficult. And the only person who's not a true believer in that system, and I'm not accusing them of any wrongdoing. I don't think they're wrongdoers. I think they're ethical people. They just have the wrong ethics. They have the wrong ethics. They're true believers in our system of government control by corporations and enforcing laws which are passed by legislature at the behest of wealthy donors. They don't see it that way. They think that the legislature is doing their best. I don't think they're doing their best. That's the difference. I see the truth. They're true believers. They don't see the truth.
Awesome. Well, y'all heard it. Vote Martin Cowen for Attorney General in November. I believe November 6th is
November the 8th, Tuesday,
8th.
November the 8th,
2022.
2022.
I've been saying the wrong date for the last 2
No
weeks.
worries. It's always on the second. I think it's on the second Tuesday, or it's on the.
Yeah, that would be the second
Tuesday. On the
Tuesday.
Tuesday following the first Monday, or so I don't know. Whatever.
Whatever the rule is.
On the second Monday. Tuesday following the second Monday. Whatever it is. But it's the 8th. I know that.
All right. Well, Martin, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Do you have anything you want to plug before we hang up?
Martin Cowen for Georgia.com. You can follow me on Twitter at ML Cowen. While I am on Facebook, it's only a personal page, so not very interesting.
All right. And if you have any interest in joining the LP or donating to the LP Georgia, or to Martin's campaign, visit lpgeorgia.com and you can find all of the information you need there. That's it. This has been the Free Georgia Podcast. We'll see you next week.